Egypt has issued an arrest warrant for the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, Mohammed Abadi, and at least 9 other Muslim Brotherhood figures. Joining us now to talk about all of this is Herb London, Manhattan Institute Senior Fellow and member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Hello, Herb. How are you, sir?
Steve, pleasure to be with you this afternoon.
Well, it's great to talk to you again. It's been a long time. I thank you for making the time. Okay, let's start first before we get to the specifics of what the prosecutor in Egypt did today. The United States seems to be having a hard time on how to respond since the coup, on what to call it, on whether or not to continue aid, on who to support. I mean, they have come out and basically said, you know, don't destroy the Muslim Brotherhood. Everybody has to participate in the next round of elections and in the next government. But has the Obama administration been clear enough?
Well, part of the difficulty is the lack of clarity. In fact, what you may recall when Morsi was installed, there was a charm campaign organized by the State Department suggesting that the Muslim Brotherhood is the one organization that could bring about stability in North Africa. And so now that it's deposed in Egypt, one raises the question, why wasn't the United States giving some consideration to alternatives, since the Muslim Brotherhood itself had no experience in governing any nation? So this is very problematic. It's problematic because we have been unable to recognize our strategic interests, number one, and number two, it's problematic because we had no inkling that the Morsi government would fall that quickly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Of course, right along, though, we did see the actions of the Morsi government, and we saw the actions they were taking, and some say that some of those led to Morsi being, if not uninvited officially, uninvited behind closed doors or through channels, because he was due to be here in the United States not all that long ago. And you know, the clamping down, the political prisoners, the declaring his declarations to be above the Constitution and beyond reproach, all these kinds of things were, you know, just flew in the face of so-called democracy.
Well, there's another consideration, of course, and it's a critical one, and that is nutritional levels in Egypt. Egypt is a net importer of wheat, of food, but moreover, even the staple in the country, which is fava beans, have gone up in price by roughly 200% in the last month. People cannot afford to buy food in Egypt. So you're talking about something very basic. The Morsi government has been unable to create an environment where people are eating properly, where the jobs are being created, and so you have a country that is now a failed state. It is a failed state in every aspect, politically, economically, culturally.
All right, so how does Egypt go forward? Are you satisfied that this temporary president will be able to map out the roadmap to lead to new elections, and will the Muslim Brotherhood partake of those elections? Will the leadership that's now has warrants out for their arrest be banished or imprisoned for these elections? And are you concerned as to whether or not the Muslim Brotherhood is included?
Well, first of all, I mean, all of the right statements are being made about the Muslim Brotherhood and its inclusion in a new government. That's the right statement. What's not right is that there's likely to be a civil war. The Muslim Brotherhood is not going to participate in this new government. Number two, the military is not prepared to really create the environment necessary for stability in the area. Keep in mind that the military in Egypt owns almost all of the significant economic assets in Egypt. So they have a stake in the retention of control, even though obviously that control has to be shared. Third, I think it's very important to note that what you have here is a situation where the military does not want to be accountable for the failure of the country. So they really want to opt out as quickly as possible. But how do you do that? The only stabilizing influence in the country is the military. That's the only stabilizing, cohesive element in Egypt. There is no other. So it's a very, very confusing situation. They're reluctant leaders. They do not want to be there, and yet on the other hand, history has forced them into this position. Keep in mind that the public turned against the military. What was Mubarak? Mubarak was a military man. And so the public turned against them once. There's no question it's only a matter of time before the public turns against them again. So a year from now, or maybe even less time than that, Tahrir Square is going to be filled with demonstrators saying they're not entirely happy about the direction of the country. Yeah, so this is a very, very problematic situation. The only thing that the Egyptians can do at the moment is to plead for foreign aid. They'll go to the United States hat in hand begging for assistance. We already give them close to $2 billion a year. It's not going to increase dramatically. And on top of it, you've got Arab states like Saudi Arabia and Qatar that are saying they're going to give $8 billion. Well, that's not sufficient to deal with a population of 85 million people, the largest Arab state in the world. So, I mean, it's a very problematic situation, one where there are no easy solutions, and number one, and number two, no role for the United States to play because we don't have that much leverage.
Yeah, no, we're talking to Herb London, a Manhattan Institute senior fellow, member of the Council on Foreign Relations, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Having said everything you just said, aid is a question. You're saying, well, most of the aid we give, it goes to the military. But you're talking about non-military aid. But, you know, there's talk in Washington that because it was a military coup, and again, the administration has not classified it as such, but because many see it as a military coup, if it were to be classified by our government as that or recognized as that, we would have an obligation to cut off the military aid, the foreign aid that we give to Egypt until further notice. So where are we?
You're very wise. You're very wise. I mean, it's a very statement. We would be obliged if this was a coup. It's one of the reasons why no one in Washington is calling this a coup d'etat. It is a coup. By any reasonable standards, it's a coup. But you can't say that for the legalistic reasons that you mentioned. Obviously, this government is going to continue to pretend it was a revolution. It was a coup, but not a revolution. So I think that even though the semantics here may seem unimportant, they are very important indeed when it comes to our Congress and the kind of aid that will be provided. Look, on the humanitarian level, there is some aid that will be provided. There's no question. You're going to have people starving in Egypt. The world is not going to turn its back. However, you've got a failed state, and the question is, how much aid will be provided? Will it be provided in time? And can you sustain a country of 85 million people that is a completely failed state?
One more question. How long do you see it taking before we actually have a roadmap in place, quote unquote, before we have elections? And again, will those elections serve to satisfy all interested parties in your view?
Well, first of all, you have a country that is fractured. You've got the Muslim Brotherhood, but even within the Muslim Brotherhood, or slightly to the left of the Muslim Brotherhood, are the Salafists, who have an even more extreme agenda. On the top of it, you've got 10% of the population that are cops, and they've been facing murderous conditions, terrible conditions, under the present government.
Absolutely.
How do you align all of these forces at the same time? Moreover, the internal problems that Egypt faces are not so bad from the standpoint of Israel, because if you had a Muslim Brotherhood in control, it would only be a question of time before the Sinai, which is presently a kind of no man's land used by the terrorists to attack Israel, would become a formidable force used against Israel. So, again, there are some in the area who are saying, maybe it's not so bad to see this chaotic situation in Egypt. On the other hand, as I've already suggested, to see the kind of humanitarian plight that the Egyptians are facing is one that we're not going to turn our backs on.
All right, Herb, very fascinating. I hope you'll come back often, sir. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
All right, my pleasure. Herb London, ladies and gentlemen, Manhattan Institute.